Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today we're going to be giving you some underrated SFF book recommendations that I really think are worth reading. Fun fact, this is actually the second time I filmed this video. I filmed it a couple weeks ago, absolutely hated the way it came out, and couldn't figure out why until I realized I had like two separate video ideas that kind of made it a nightmare. So I've revamped it, we're switching it up, and then the second part, or the second idea from the original video, will come to light at some point in time. But these are 5 books that I really like and would like to see read more here on BookTube. They are a mix of both young adult and adult SFF titles. I'm not saying that these books are absolutely not read. I think the book with the highest amount of ratings is 13,000 ratings. Sounds like a lot, but also I think they deserve a whole lot more. And some of these books are books that I absolutely love and I thought had been read so much more than what they have been. Without any further ado, we are actually going to jump into the video. I think that's the first time in such a long time that I've made an intro short and quick and to the point, so we're just gonna roll with it. On to book number 1. The first book I'd like to recommend, I think, is a book that went under the radar last year in terms of young adult fantasy releases, and I would like to see that change because this is one of the young adult fantasies that I really liked last year, and not a lot of people have read it, and that's Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. I believe this clocks in at around 5,500 ratings on Goodreads. This is currently a young adult fantasy standalone that follows a girl whose father was just murdered, and he also happened to be the emperor. So in a time of like political turmoil, she has to ascend to become empress, and then also deal with the fact that she believes her father has been murdered, although everyone else has ruled it as like kind of a natural death. You follow her take a dangerous and frankly heretical path to seek justice for her father, all the while risking her tenuous position on the throne. I really like this book. I think it balances political, I almost said politics, shoot me. It mixes the political aspects and the mystery aspects very well. I thought the world and the world building, especially for a young adult novel, was really well done, and I also loved the atmosphere and tone of the overall story. Also, our MC is definitely an underdog. She's really easy to root for, and the sort of band that she brings together also are people that you really like. The only reason why I hesitate to absolutely recommend this and shove this into people's hands is that there is a little bit of a cliffhanger ending, and there is no current idea for a sequel, even though the author would like to write one if the publisher would let her. So I do really like it. I think I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was a really good time and a book that I do think about a lot as well. So I have to film this really fast because the sun is setting, but a few hours after I went and filmed this video, Joan He has announced that she is one step away from suing her publisher for copyright infringement. Essentially, Albert Whitman & Co. has not been paying her royalties on time, and there's a stipulation in her contract saying like if that happens, the copyright goes back to Joan. It's a really shitty situation, and they are not being compliant. They're not complying with what they're supposed to be doing, which is bullshit. Essentially what is supposed to happen and what they should be doing is pulling all of the stock from bookshelves, from publishers, everything. This book should not be sold in North America. So if you want to read Descendant of the Crane, please ensure that you are going to purchase it from the UK publisher Titan Books, because they are being very fair. They're not doing anything wrong. They're not in the wrong. If you are able and willing, possibly support Joan. I personally am going to be pre-ordering her next book, The Ones We're Meant to Find. She's with a new publisher now, Macmillan, and they've been a lot better to her. The cover also, like, look at it. Gorgeous. It's a really crappy situation. The top links in the descriptions will have Joan's Twitter thread alleging all of the things that have happened to her, and pre-order links if you choose. Book number 2 on this list is a book that really took me by surprise last year, and I like absolutely adored it, and that is The Mayoral Thieves by Sherry Dimeline. This is written by a indigenous author of the Métis tribe, and it's actually decently circulated in Canada, or promoted here in Canada. You see it a lot in Indigo and like on sale, and it has won all the awards, and I still think it needs to be read a lot more. This has 13,500 ratings on Goodreads. This did surprise me so much because it is, first of all, so incredibly short, and it is actually a sort of dystopian futuristic novel. Essentially, in this book, in the future, the world has lost its ability to dream and people are going insane because of it. The only people that have retained their ability to dream are Indigenous peoples, and they are then sought after for their bone marrow because that holds the cure. And you basically follow this one boy trying to find others to survive with. And it's really deeply heartbreaking and upsetting. The thing that is so disturbing about this novel is that it doesn't seem unrealistic. This book specifically kind of confronts some of the things that Canada specifically did to its Indigenous peoples, because what Canada has done is like absolutely horrendous. And it kind of cycles through trauma and like the ability to still hope, and it just puts such a freaking impact on me in 235 pages. This book is so good. This does dystopian really well. I know a lot of people are burnt out from like the young adult 2010 craze of dystopian, but this is like dystopian in its truest sense. It examines the government and the state of our world, and it's really good, heartbreaking, and impactful, and I think a lot of people need to read it more. The next book I'm going to talk about, I'm going to recommend because I want to, even though I've talked about it so many times already this year, but I loved it. It's one of my favorites of the year, and more people need to read it, and that's none other than Jade City by Fonda Lee. Let me tell you that I was absolutely shocked when I found out that this book only has 8,200 ratings here on Goodreads. I have been hearing about this book since it came out. I've been wanting to read it since it came out, and the fact that it only has 8,000 ratings and it came out I think in like 2017, this book needs to be read more. Even juggernauts on BookTube like Daniel Green has talked about it and really promoted it, and it only has 8,000 ratings on Goodreads. That needs to change. This book is an urban fantasy set on the island of Kekon. This island has this magical jade, and certain individuals have the power to wield it, and it gives them like crazy powers. And you follow this one family who is the head of one of like the two major crime families. They are essentially sort of like minding their own business when like the other main mafia family kind of starts like encroaching upon their territory, and war is threatening to break out. You follow like 4 different perspectives. It's really good. I have an entire dedicated review if you need me to sell you on it more. I've read this twice this year and I absolutely adored it. It is one of the most unique and innovative takes on fantasy that I have read in a very long time. The characters in here are so vivid and dynamic and frustrating, but like in the best way. The plot is paced immaculately. There are twists and turns left and right. I'm nervous. I'm supposed to be reading Jade City this month, Jade War this month, I should say. And I'm nervous because I think it's going to rip my heart out to shreds. Please read this book if you like fantasy. It will not disappoint. The next book I want to recommend is a book I knew flew under the radar and wasn't super popular, but I still want to change that, and I think it should be read a whole lot more. It's another favorite of the year, and that's Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. This is an adult fantasy standalone story. It follows this girl who is of mixed race. Her father is a really popular like provincial leader, and her mother is a part of like a nomadic tribe of peoples that is like despised by like the general population, and she kind of lives a very sheltered life because of that. She then unintentionally draws the ire of this magical terrible being who essentially wants to kind of like take over their world, and is whisked away, taken away, and basically just has to survive. This leans definitely towards the romantic end of fantasy whilst not being fantasy romance. It's incredibly high stakes. It is terrifying what these characters have to go through, and their experiences are really tough. It is also a bit of a slower paced, definitely character focused story. I love the world building and how the magic in here went hand in hand with culture. I was deeply, deeply invested in this story, so much so that I was actually really sad that there's no true sequel. There is Realm of Ash, which is right here, which is a companion and is set in the same world, but it doesn't follow the same characters, and that was a little heartbreaking to discover for me, but this is a really good book. Great standalone. I love it. I think I also have a review for this one. I'll leave it linked. Yes, I do. I do have a review. I forgot. The final book I would like to recommend, I actually don't remember at all when it came out, and I'm just so surprised by how few people have read it for many reasons. I might as well just tell you what the book is now, and that's Mirage by Somaya Dowd. This has just over 9,000 ratings on Goodreads, and the reason I'm so surprised that it's so underread was it was featured, I believe, in a lot of book boxes when it came out, and I received it in an owl crate. I know it was featured in other books as well, and yet still not enough people have read it, and it's really frustrating. This is a Moroccan-inspired science fiction fantasy blend that follows Imani, who's just kind of living her life, surviving, doing the best she can. Her family is very impoverished, but she's like just trying to live throughout like the brutal occupation of her peoples, and then she is discovered to be the perfect doppelganger of the like princess and like ruler to be Maram, and so she ends up being like a body double because this princess is so hated, and then things start to shift and change, and she kind of finds herself at the helm of a political revolution. There were a couple construction things about the story that I didn't love, but I do think that this is a book worth reading, and it brings a lot of unique things to a young adult tale. I really liked the science fiction and fantasy elements and how they were really seamlessly blended together. The relationship between the two girls was so fascinating because you could see how it started to shift and how they could start to care for one another, but then also you have to rectify with the fact that the High Princess is like kind of a terrible person, but then also can she make reparation? Like there's a lot wrapped up into this story that I really, really liked, and those elements specifically are why I would like to continue and finish out the duology. If you like young adult stories specifically, I definitely suggest you should give this a try. I wasn't a fan of like the main romance in here, but I think the other character is going to have a great sapphic romance in the sequel, which I'm excited for. I'm really passionate about these books, and I hope that I convinced you to possibly pick one up in the future. Words don't want to work today. Let me know down in the comments below if you have any underrated SFF books that you think I should read, because I would deeply appreciate it. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!